Hello, everyone. Today we're here with Alicia, Quantum Phoenix from Costa Rica, talking about the gene keys and a lot of other stuff. I just met Alicia a little over a year ago, and definitely her transmissions, her way of living, and so simply changed a lot of perspectives for me in my life. And I'm so happy that she's here with us today. What kind of transmission are you going to bring to us today, Alicia?
Love you, Monty. Um, yeah, welcome everybody. It's so nice to connect with you all. I'm returning back to the technological world for a moment in time and space because I'm so excited for what I'm feeling is going on right now. We've got a cicada super loud in the background, by the way, which is Gene Key 28. If you can hear that. Actually, there's many cicadas kind of sounding like ringing bells, and then there's one that's just like really bringing a transmission right now. In case anyone has 28 in my culture sphere, it's about helping us remember the immortal nature that we are, moving from the shadow of purposelessness. And when you remember you're an immortal being, you start to change, postponing things that maybe you'll do in another lifetime, or when you reincarnate, or like you've only got this certain amount of lessons that you can handle this time around. So you'll wait for the next time that you incarnate to deal with the rest of it or do what needs to be done. And the 28, I didn't plan to start off with this, but the cicada just jumped in, and that's how the shamanic realm works. That's how the dream arc works. That's how the genetic code actually works, because we have the genetic code of every being on this planet within ourselves. And so that's my invitation as I talk today, is to really bring in a transmission about a lot of what I'm hearing Richard Rudd and Zach Bush talk about in a video I just watched with them that was about transcendent biology and the future human being. And we're currently in transit in tropical astrology with Gene Key 19 right now, which is the future human being. And so my SQ is the 33, which unlocks that 19. So I feel like maybe just sharing in transmission and in storytelling, maybe I'm here to help you move from the forgetting to the remembering, from the forgetting to the revelation. The 33 is about the retreat in the mountain. And that's kind of where I find myself right now in Costa Rica, is a retreat in a place called the Diamond Valley. I also have Gene Key 8, which is about the diamond of the self. It's my Chiron wound, and it's my evolution sphere. So, and it's a Palladian code. And that's another thing that I want to kind of summarize. I'm bouncing all over the place through time and space because I want to talk about some things about star codes and star DNA. And I'm feeling and hearing a lot of the evolution of the gene keys coming out, and even the curiosity around when the future human being arrives and what will it look like. And with the Star Pearl just being announced, if anybody saw that, you can go get your free Star Pearl profile online now. It's called the Harmony Sequence. And so, you've got your prosperity sequence, you've got your Pearl sequence, your Venus sequence, you've got your Harmony sequence, which I have to connect to Gene Key 50, right? From corruption to harmony. And so I've been pulling a lot of my friends' star pearls, or having them pull them and sending them to me, because I feel it's very much so a part of the synarchy coming into the form, and seeing how we all weave together the web of a higher collective vision and a higher collective purpose when we come together to serve humanity beyond the lower nature, which is what I would call the rapture. Gene Key 30. The moon is in it right now. So the moon is at 33.3, moving into 33 or 30 point, I'm sorry, it's 30.3, moving into 30.4, which is my purpose. And so it's about bringing a rapturous transmission. It's about bringing the celestial fire that burns all desire. And the celestial fire and the purification of the lower outer body, which is ultimately what Gene Key 30 represents, is the idea of a gate that we go through when we sacrifice. The 19 in the highest form is the sacrifice. It's also the 5th planetary initiation. We sacrifice the lower nature to serve the greater good. And so desires, sometimes we can think of those generally as sexual desire, but it can be about money and power and food. And, we're constantly kind of operating through this lower nature of I want, consume, 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 me. So we're inviting us to go through that gate of purification, the codon ring of purification, the 13 and the 30, in order to unlock the 7 sacred seals transmission, which are the master codes of the mother, gene key 22, which are very key in working with the 55 dragonflies dream prophecy. From victimization, no more blaming and complaining, to the mutation. And so in order to mutate from the lower nature, that nymph under the water, into the higher nature, which is moving out of the underworld, coming up into the sun, the wings fly out of our backs. We become a whole new type of being. This type of information is not quite written about. Maybe in mythologies, you've heard of some things of immortal beings, and the Bhagavad Gita and books of the gods, and maybe if you know anything about celestial histories. But moving into a realm of a dance, of an exploration, of an experiment, of the idea that we are eternal, timeless, immortal beings. We are time travelers. We've come here at a very moment in time to incarnate into a certain time space reality in order to inform and guide humanity into the next steps that we must go through to rewrite a fall. And the 33 talks about this. It talks about a flood. It talks about a flood memory. It talks about a return to Eden. So what I'm proposing here is that we've come in this time and space, all of us, to come together as a Gene Key society, as a Palladian society, as a future society, to start bringing balance within ourselves, to be of the greatest service, and to start bringing balance into the systems that are currently in place that are clearly no longer serving humanity's highest good. That is indisputable, that the current systems in place have brought us into extreme poverty, illness, war, greed, fill in the blanks. So we already know that the current systems are not working. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is my responsibility? What is my individual contribution to the greater collective whole? And that's usually going to have a lot to do with different backgrounds and skills that you've had in your early life, in the morning of your life, as you move into the afternoon of your life, where you take all that you've learned from the morning of your life, and now you're birthing that wisdom into yourself and into the physical and into the collective to be of the greatest service, which goes back to the 28 and immortality and the shadow of purposelessness. And, the Gene Keys talks about unlocking the higher purpose in your DNA. And so that's really what we're here to do. And I felt it was important to start to bring through some of the more cosmic understandings and translations connected to the different star systems and the star pearl. And sitting here in Costa Rica, if you actually write it out, I like to call it Costa Rica, because you can see the CO, and then it spells, if you put Costa Rica together as one word, there's the word star in the center. So I feel Costa Rica is like a central star hub. I actually call it the galactic 0 point. And so I have the Synarchy 44.4 in my vocation. So I am here to assist with bringing the Synarchy together in the form. And now I want to take you back a little bit, because sometimes when I hear myself talk, I'm like, where the hell did this even come from? 8 years ago, I was living in Austin, Texas, just being a mom and a wife. I never heard of a Palladian before. I'd never pulled my astrology chart. I didn't know much about anything as far as astrology or spirituality went. I'd read a couple spiritual books. And then, I was delivering my third son. I'd kind of been living the American dream in Austin, Texas. Had worked for an IT company, 9 to 5, busy all the time, but making that money, happily married, buying a house, buying the cars, busy, busy, busy all the time, picking up kids, trying to find the perfect school for my kids, never could. You tell me where it is, who's found the perfect school for their kids? Oh, nobody. You can pretend, and it probably costs you a pretty penny to try to find it. And if you for those with eyes to see, if you read through the Gene Keys transmissions, many of the codes actually talk about the future of education and children not needing formal education at all. But moms and dads need a break, and so they put their kids in daycare because that's basically what schools become, and military like operations. These are just my own personal opinions. Don't take any offense. Offense is taken, not given. But let's be real about what's going on with the educational systems, with the medical systems, with the government systems, with the AI technological systems, right? So there's something kind of going on in these flows. But I didn't know that then. I trusted doctors. I trusted presidents and militaries and banks and all of those structures and schools until I didn't. And it took for me, having the 8, it talks about moving beyond the comfort zone. So maybe you have the 8. It talks about moving beyond the comfort zone. It's talking about a life of mediocrity. And its programming partner is the 14. It's a compromise. So we're talking about, these are Palladian codes. These are directly aligned to the Palladian star system. If you don't know about Pallades, go look up the Palladians, go look up the book Bringers of the Dawn, Teachings of the Palladians. But eventually, after my near-death experience, delivering my 3rd child, I started to wake up. It's like I literally was catapulted into a new version of myself. It was like I reincarnated as another soul, or as a higher soul, a higher version of myself, but I kept the same body. And so then I was called in this body to go back into Alicia's home, Alicia's family, and observe what she had created. I'm feeling the 17 in this because it was like I was watching myself live in this reality. I was watching my busyness. I was watching my stress. I was watching fill in the blanks. I was watching my consumerism. I was watching my collection of many, many things. Because what do you do with a 4,000 square foot house but fill it up with a bunch of stuff, furnitures, and you know, and pots and pans and serving buffets and closets of clothes and hundreds of shoes and all of it, all of it, all of it. And so eventually I watched a documentary. I watched 2 very key documentaries, which I would highly recommend that everybody watch. One of them was called Minimalism. And as soon as I saw it, and I probably couldn't have seen it a moment sooner, as soon as I saw it, I started to cry. I was like, oh my God, there's nothing minimal about me. I have so much stuff. I'm just swimming in shit. I just got closets full of stuff. And I just thought about what it would feel like to release all of that. And that's where my journey really started. I started getting rid of a bunch of stuff. I started just Facebook marketplacing everything, selling stuff and having people just come pick it up for free and giving it away. And it was like just that. And I really feeling the 23 as I talk about this. I didn't know the Gene Keys then, but I'm just looking back at what I was experiencing, which the 23 I would also call a Palladian code. And I'll tell you why I'm calling Palladian codes at the right moment in time based on astrological alignments. And so anyways, the minimalism documentary, I'd highly recommend that anybody watch it. And, I started playing with activities with my family. I started talking my children into like, let's wake up and get rid of 100 things every single day. Even if it's just little plastic toys or, fake party favors from birthday parties, like, let's stop buying a bunch of fake plastic shit anyways, for real. Let's stop contributing to this monster that is polluting our earth. It starts with us. We have to remember the individual impact we have and really take responsibility for that first and foremost. And that was an invitation I was being called into, was making an initiation into my planetary impact on a physical, emotional, mental level. Do you need my help with something, River? What's up?
I've been sparkling.
You're doing sparkles for her? Oh, beautiful. Okay, I'm just doing a chat with my friend right now, okay?
You like the sparkle?
Yeah, she looks great. Thank you. Yeah, my daughter River is painting her frozen Elsa doll with glitter and sparkles. That's another thing we'll talk about at some point.
And pink.
And paint, yeah, because I'd like to invite some souls to come and hang out and do some glitter sparkle paints and sing songs and talk about the future of humanity. That's where the Palladian mission comes in.
Mom,
But I want to take you back to another documentary.
Please.
Yeah,
Help me before.
I'll help you in a little bit, but right now I'm going to do a call with my friend, okay? Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, perfect. And so the next documentary that I watched was called Down to Earth, and it had Leonardo DiCaprio in it. And so,
My bed.
River, I'm gonna ask you to please put the glitter away and let me finish my conversation with my sister, okay?
This is mine.
Okay, perfect.
And I was gonna sleep with it.
Okay. So let's talk about the other documentary that I saw. So the first one was Minimalism. Put it on your list. Even if you've watched it, watch it again. It really helps you get rid of all your clutter, bring you into the simplification of the 23. And in order to unlock the 43, another Palladian code, which happens to be my pearl, and it's a sacred seal, the sacred seal of the heart. And the Palladians are all about opening the heart and the heart technology. And so it was the simplification of my life, the removing of the complexity in my life and the physical space that started to open up more of the epiphanies, more of the insights of the 43. But before, I was so cluttered and I was so busy and I was so consumed by the physical material plane that I couldn't perceive these higher dimensions until I cleared that clutter. This was a big step in the initiation process, and Uranus has been kind of hanging out at Gene Key 23 for a long time. There's this revolutionary energy, and so it doesn't matter if you have this code or not, but it would be very valuable if you have the 23 or the 43 to really sit with moving it, the invitation to move into the quintessence, the fifth element, the alchemical transformation of the 23. And so the documentary I watched was actually, it was called Before the Flood. That was the second one I saw, Before the Flood. Interesting topic, interesting name, interesting title, especially since we've been talking about Gene Key 33 and the final revelation, and it talks about the memory of a flood. So you could call a flood a physical flood, a Noah's Ark flood, a biblical flood. You could call it a flood of memory. You could call it a flood of consciousness. But in this Before the Flood, it had a character, Leonardo DiCaprio, whose birthday is 11/11. I find kind of interesting. I like to look up people's birthdays and see who they are, especially with the Galactic Maya calculations. This is one I love looking at astrology, gene keys, human design, Galactic Maya, Palladian Mayan cosmology, really kind of crack that open with each and every one of us and remember like our higher cause, our higher mission, our higher DNA, our higher purpose for being on the earth at this time. And the invitation to embody the future human being, because there's no such thing as time and space. So as soon as you remember you're immortal, you're no longer just hanging on to the things that happened to you in a very short time of your first 21 years of life. Because that's a very, very small picture of your immortal reality, where you've lived in other dimensions, where you've lived in other galaxies, where you've lived in other star systems. And so, and certainly other lifetimes, which even the 44 actually talks about. The whole idea of your perception of previous lifetimes has to do with your reading of a memory in the cosmic DNA, in the cosmic library. So everything has already happened. We're just kind of coming in and focusing on a very particular time and space where we're rewriting fractal code. That's what the 44 talks about, actually. And that's my job in my vocation, is kind of to clean out the interference patterns in the DNA so we can move to a timeline beyond corruption. This is a codon ring of the Illuminati. The 44 and the 50 have both of these codes, to move to unlock the higher Illuminati, the codon ring of the Illuminati, the synarchy and the harmony. I feel Gene Key 50 is super connected to the star pearl. So anyways, back to this documentary. They were showing the Amazon rainforest, and they were showing how it was being cut down, and they were planting these date palm trees. And, I'd never heard of that stuff. I never really realized that was going on, but something hit me for the first time where I started to cry. I started to cry at the idea that animals' homes were being taken, that eternal forests were being cut down to process this thing called date palm oil. And even afterwards, I went and looked up what we even use that for, and we shouldn't be using it. Hello. It's in Oreo cookies, and it's in cosmetics, and it's in a bunch of bullshit that we really don't need to be using, just to be honest. We're cutting down rainforests for it, right? So the capitalistic world is kind of taken over and is starting to kind of mow down eternal rainforests and clean waters. And I don't say this from a victim perspective, because I try to be careful with the idea that there's any hopeless story here. But we do have to be real about the shadows within ourselves, and we have to be real about the shadows of what's taking place on a planetary level right now. We can't run away from it. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. We can't pretend we don't see it. In order for a shadow to come to the light, you have to identify it. So we know these are shadow patterns that we've been mining and destroying the earth for our selfish reasons and for capitalism. That's clear. I think we can all agree with that. But at the end of that video, there was a quiz, and I could go online to the quiz, and it was like an assessment is a better way to put it. It was asking me about my lifestyle, so it could calculate my impact on the earth. And so it asked things like, do you eat meat? How much do you eat? How big is your house? How many cars do you have? How big are your cars? How many refrigerators do you have? How many air conditioners do you have? How much do you travel? And I was just filling it in. Yes, I eat meat. I have a 4,000 square foot house. I have 2 V8 engine cars. I travel, 10 times a year in airplanes with my family of 5. And I have 2 refrigerators, one in the garage for the just in cases that's always running. I have 2 air conditioners, and it basically gave me like my emissions, my personal carbon footprint. And I just started to cry. I was like, wow, I have been fucking the mother, and I didn't even know it. And once I had that epiphany, that insight, I went from the deafness of having no idea how my personal reality is impacting the whole. I asked myself, what can I personally do? Well, first, I can't do anything I don't stand for. I cannot contribute to the things I don't agree with. That's the first stand that I have to take. And so slowly but surely, I sold my big house. We moved to a smaller house as a family. We downsized everything. We simplified our lives. We got rid of tons and tons and tons of stuff. And we were kind of like slowly unchaining ourselves from the idea that we needed to work so much to make a certain amount of money to live a certain type of lifestyle and to like uphold that lifestyle. Because I was starting to get the idea that I didn't want to be a slave. And just because money was involved didn't mean it wasn't slavery. If I had to show up on time somewhere, if I had to be connected, if I needed to report to someone, if I needed to do this or that in order to do this, it felt like, well, some kind of level of authority or control being imposed on me. And I had to ask myself if I agreed with those things or not. And it really actually created a rebel within myself. This is the 43. I'm really feeling the pearl of myself as I'm just navigating through the storytelling of my transformation. And so I'd encourage everybody to watch those two documentaries. There's another one I'd recommend too, but I get we all have extremely busy lives and you don't have time to just be sitting on tech all day. Well, actually, still, even when you don't have time, somehow everybody finds a way to sit on their tech all day. Who knows what's going on in there? Just kind of getting all whirled up. And yeah, taking so much time away from technology really helped me see the implant of it. And I get that it still has to be used in this world for a time, but we need to use it wisely. And we need to think about how we're putting it in the hands of our children. And I feel the responsibility of that. All right, so I'm hopping back around. You know, we watch these documentaries, we sell everything, we move to a smaller house, and then we just get this sudden idea that we're going to get on a plane and go to Costa Rica and stay for 2 months. So me and my happy family, we created an Instagram account. It was called Halls Gone Wild. That's my last name. And we were like, everybody thought we were crazy that we were going to go stay in a foreign country for 2 months. They were like, what? And so as soon as we got here, I just finished up my Reiki master teaching here in a place called Monteverde. And I learned a lot about energy and light and how it works. And I never did like become a practicing Reiki master in the way that they teach you to like do sessions. It was just, I started to recognize, oh, I am Reiki. I am energy. I am light. Everywhere I go, I am a beam of light. I am a channel of light. There is nowhere that I'm not that is not light. And everywhere I go, I am exuding that light beyond a price. An emissary of light, a council of light. So I was starting to have those types of epiphanies and realizations, especially when I got to this country. It was very soon after that. Again, we think we're just on a 2-month vacation. And the next thing you know, within 2 weeks, we had decided that we were going to stay. I called my mom. I flew her in to come see the place. We were staying in an eco-village community called Ecovia. And it was pretty beautiful, the dynamic group of people. It was like 40 countries represented in this small little portal. I didn't know what a portal was back then, but now I understand. I was in a freaking portal. I was in a wormhole. I was in a vortex. You know, I was in a stargate. I didn't have that context yet. I hadn't felt into the terminology of a star seed yet. Those terms were just kind of like popping up into my field 7-ish years ago. And so, yeah, we decided to sell everything, move there. And that was when the biggest shocks and transformation of my life took place. And one more documentary that I mentioned earlier, there was one called Down to Earth. That actually was a documentary based on the school my children were going to, the community that I lived in, and other communities connected to another person that had built those or initiated the unfolding of those communities. So that was a Netflix documentary called Down to Earth. But a lot has changed since then, because this was before I'm trying to find the peaceful, nice girl way to say, you know, this was before our world was attempted to be taken over. Nothing short of it. You know, where all of a sudden it became acceptable that we would put poisons in our children to protect them from dying. All of a sudden we were all afraid to die. All of a sudden people are being told they have to wear masks. All of a sudden people are told that if you don't put this needle in your arm, you don't have the right to go here or there or do anything you want. Here in Costa Rica, you couldn't drive past 5 o'clock. You couldn't even go to the beach or the river. Now that's some shit, isn't it? Ooh, and so, you know, as I came into Costa Rica, I'm going to take you back to a little before all that bullshit happened. And I see the scars and the damage of what it's done to humanity and the land and the mass amounts of development that have taken place since this occurrence, and the mass amount of million and billionaires that have occurred from this, and the mass amount of people who have died from this. So there are people who have profited off of the crimes against humanity. Now, going back to when I first came to this community and we decided to stay there, it was almost soon after that that I met a new person, a man named Eduardo. He'd come to give my family, my mother, my husband, and myself energy work and body work. And I'd never really done anything like this. And something happened when I met this man. We had our hands in the prayer position. We looked in each other's eyes. We said a few ohms, and I was feeling this tug at my soul, something I never felt before. I didn't know how to describe it. I didn't know how to put words to this thing, but I will say I was a happily married woman for 14 years with my husband, kind of really nailing the family life of continually leaving behind the busy jobs to be very present for my children. And my identity was being a mother and a wife. And eventually I was being called to go into an initiation that wouldn't be for me. I thought I had already done enough having a near-death experience. I thought I'd done enough, like selling all my possessions. I thought I'd done enough, like downsizing and living a more simple life and moving to a new country. I was like, I am surrendering so hard right now. I'm at the top. I'm winning this game. And then boom. Surrender some more, Alicia, surrender some more, Alicia, surrender some more, die some more, die some more. I was like, shit. You know, I was leaping into the void. The 29 is my radiance. I was being called to leap into the void. You don't know where you're going next. People are going to think you're crazy, but you know you chose to do something and you just have to follow this path. It is Alice down the rabbit hole, actually. And it's very Wizard of Oz like. So, so I meet this new man, and just days after that, I'd met a woman from Sweden, I think it was, and she was the one that introduced me into human design. I never heard of it before. She'd met my daughter and said that she was an advanced being, and she wanted to look her up and tell me more about her. And I was like, yeah, I can tell she's an advanced being, but I didn't have the context to put it to. She's a strong one. And so, so she did this human design reading with me, and that was my first initiation into human design. And then after that, I saw that it was just like a free profile online. I'd spent $300 on this reading, and I was like, it's free online? Now, obviously, the woman couldn't have told me, you know, the website wasn't going to tell me what this woman was able to tell me, right? So there was a price for those gifts and that transmission that she gave me. And the interesting thing about this woman actually is that she told me she moved to Costa Rica years before with her husband and her 2 sons. So similar to me, I just moved to Costa Rica with my husband and my 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. But that her husband wanted to go back to Sweden and that her sons wanted to go with her. And she decided she didn't want to go and she was going to stay here. And when I heard that story, like I never heard of a woman that wasn't a full-time mother to her children that would let her children go back with their father. I never heard of anything like that. And I judged the shit out of her so hard in my mind. And you know, that's an interesting thing, right? Because judgment, your judgment is where your fears are. And then of course, as fate would have it, I have to move a little bit because I've got to get on a battery charge. So as I sat there and judged the hell out of this woman for leaving her kid, you know, I didn't really expect that my life was going to have some kind of twist that would forever change me. My video is probably not as good here, but I think this is mostly about audio anyway, so we're just rolling with that.
Yeah, it's good.
And so anyways, this was the start of a whole nother reality for me. Just the learning of the human design. I went home that night and of course I pulled every one of my family's charts. I pulled the man that I had met's chart, dude that barely spoke English, but I'd felt like I'd known him forever in my life, in my lifetimes, like eternity. And so, and that's when, kind of interestingly enough, also, I found out that this partner, he's my current partner, but back then wasn't, named Eduardo, had the same codes as me. But in a different sequence. So I'm weaving in human design and gene keys here, to just kind of tell a love story. And to explain that I know for certain now that things are very much so written in the stars. I understand through my personal life experience, there is something more of a destiny that has been written, that when we let go of the reins of life and fear, trying to force things, all right. So we're kind of weaving this transmission because I've got mom duties in between. And I'm trying to pick up where I left off, but I might repeat myself, but we'll just roll with it. I think I was at the part when I was talking about, decoding my human design and my family's human design, and judging mothers who had left their children and different things like that. Yeah. I realized at some point I would be invited to be in a position of the very mother that I had judged, and that wasn't so easy for me. And if I didn't have the gene keys to help me move through a huge death and transformation in my life, and I'm a Scorpio with many planets in Scorpio, so I really am here to model that death and that rebirth process. And I'm here to help people die. I'm here to help people die and have some fun about it. I'm here to help people realize that when you die, you're reborn, and that you are born into your higher position of service. But I can only say that now. In the middle of it, it felt like a fucking death. And now I'm out of it. I'm like, I swear it's worth it. I swear it's okay to die. I promise you it is. My body is still here. I'm healthy as ever. I don't take supplements. I don't do practices. I don't follow all the rules. And I'm alive. I'm more alive than ever. I'm living in the freedom. But I want to take you back to that death process, because a lot of you are probably in a process like that, avoiding a process like that. Could be a completely different storyline, a completely different scenario, because we all came with a different story that we came here to unfold, a different character that we came to play. But my point is that I was able to utilize this genetic code transmission to unlock the higher purpose in my DNA. So when I went home that night after my session with this woman, and I was like decoding everyone, and I was starting to read about stuff, it led me to the gene keys. I just, stumbled upon it accidentally, right? But there's no such thing as an accident. And so I remember going back to that woman and asking her if she knew about gene keys, and she said no, she'd never heard of it, not yet. And she'd been studying human design for quite some time. So I was really catching on that, like, even though the gene keys had been around a little bit, this was in 2018 that I found it, somewhere around like the end of 2018, after I'd moved here to Costa Rica. I was like hungry. I was dying for more gene keys information. I was looking for it. I was looking for events. I was looking for retreats. I was looking for gatherings. I was looking for groups. And there was just like, I think at the time, maybe the Gene Keys Global group was like 2,000 people or something like that. I don't know how many it is now, but I know that it's grown and expanded so much. Oh yeah, River, how can I help you? Are you hot? You want to turn on the fan? Yeah, we're getting that Costa Rica heat. It's good for the... Okay, so we're just bridging the worlds here. My my daughter River had a little emergency. She got poked by the rose bush. Every rose has its thorn, right? So I had to use some salvation cream. That's what it's called. We're bringing the salvation codes and the codes of the rose, actually. So I think it was at a part where I was talking about just dying for a Gene Keys gathering, dying for a group, and I couldn't really find a whole lot out there at that time. And then eventually, you know, the shift or the pause in humanity took place, and so that certainly slowed things down in the gathering of anybody. And so it really led me into like, then I was just dying to get a book, which you can't just order a book on Amazon and get it in Costa Rica. Well, technically, I guess now you can, but back then, you know, in 2018, not so much. And I'd left that life behind in Austin, Texas, where I could order Amazon and even get it the same day. And so I found an online audiobook and I started to listen. And one of the first codes I went to was Gene Key 29. It was my radiance. And it was talking about, actually, it was talking about half-heartedness and commitment and devotion. It was talking about relationships, and it was talking about 7-year cycles. And it was actually like, as I read this book, it was talking about if you find yourself having feelings for another person and you're in a relationship, that it's either time to go strengthen that current relationship or it's possibly an invitation to move into a new relationship. I can't, I'm paraphrasing these words, but when I read them, it felt like, is someone watching me? You know, did someone write a story about what I'm being prompted to do right now? Like, it feels like deja vu. This feels like like I'm walking in the clouds. You know, it feels like a fantasy, actually. But it felt like this book had just fallen out of the sky. And I was in a structure, I was in a house that was an octagon shape. So I was learning about the I Ching, Gene Keys, human design, all at the same time, the connection to the 8, the connection to the hexagrams, and all the while I'm in a technological structure, because this is something we should remember, actually, that the shape of the structures that we live in have a lot to do with the energy and frequency flowing through our bodies. That's why I feel like the future societies are going to be building more round or octagon-like structures. I think that this is important and clear. And right now, currently, or just speaking about myself, where I was living in a box house with my windows closed, with the air conditioner on, not deeply connected to nature. In fact, even hiding from it, closing my windows and making sure that none of the animals came inside, and just completely separating myself and kind of plugging myself into my own, well, not so different from an insane asylum, honestly, when you really think about it. I didn't realize how disconnected I was to nature until I came to Costa Rica. And the invitation to start wearing no shoes and walking in the forest and touching the earth with my body and getting grass on me and poking my foot on a thorn and, you know, a snake in the grass, or, you know, fill in the blanks, and like learning not to have any fear of nature and all of the species that live in it, to start communing and becoming one with nature. I'm just going to go on pause for just a second. All right, so we're back and we're talking about the 29. That was one of the main codes I was bringing in, as I was reading this 29 code, and it felt like it was unfolding the story of my life. And I started to explore the core wound, which is in your vocation sphere. And I remember when I learned about the core wound, I saw what the core wounds were. You know, they were guilt, they were shame, repression, rejection, separation. I'm like, oh, which code is mine? What is my core wound? What is my core wound? And then I never would have thought that mine was a line 4. I never would have thought mine was rejection, because that probably feels like the least of the code that I feel most connected to. And so as I was going through this process within myself, judging myself for feeling the shadow of desire for another person, for example. And I was in my core wound of rejection. You know, I was rejecting myself because I'd been feeling these feelings for another man, and I'd been so devoted and so committed to my partner that I was disappointed in myself. I was feeling guilt and I was feeling shame too. I was feeling all the core wounds. I was feeling all of it. But that's when I saw the core of my rejection code come up, is because I was rejecting myself. I could not accept that I was feeling these feelings. I was disgusted with myself. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to tell anyone. And finally, eventually, I decided to be brave enough to call a sister of mine that was living in Austin and tell her what I was going through, because she'd been excitingly following my story and my family coming to Costa Rica. And I told her, Katie, I don't know what's happening. I met this man. He doesn't even speak my language. There's something happening with my energy body. Like I feel some kind of deep love for this person. I don't know how to get rid of this. And, you know, she just told me, like, thank you for telling me your story. And I love you and I accept you. And actually, your story is healing me right now through an experience I've had in my life. And I was like, whew, just one day of like letting it all out and not carrying it inside helped me so much. And I really think of Gene Key 59 in this case because of the transparency field. I love the 59. You don't have to have it in your codes to understand. It unlocks the prophecy of the 55. It unlocks the dragonfly's dream. So that transparency of getting something out through my voice that I'd been holding inside freed me up so much. And I really recommend that if you haven't before, go look up like SoundCloud Gene Key 59 and listen to that transmission. And it talks about the future human being. It talks about the mutation. It talks about doing the genetic laundry. 59 is connected to the physiology of the sexual organs. So it's also very interesting. It talks about the shadow of dishonesty. And so I was really, and it talks about two stars making love in the heavens. And I didn't know that eventually my story would unfold in such a way as what the 59 is directly talking about, because I thought that I had already experienced that. And I was super grateful to have been with a partner who I loved so much. And I certainly never thought that I would be called to end that relationship. But I was. And I did it honestly and I did it transparently, and I was able to communicate clearly. And we were able to navigate this breakdown of our old reality through the intelligence of the gene keys in human design. You know, as I was able to understand how he processed emotions, I was able to understand that I had an open solar plexus. And so most of the time when I entered into the field of his, I could feel what he was going through, and that it wasn't mine, but that I could hold that space or even take some space from that place and let him go through his mutation. Because that is the premise of the gene keys and human design, is this mutation that's coming in 2027. But it's not just coming in 2027, it's already been here. And there are many souls on the planet who were called to experience it in a drastic and extreme way, to kind of live to tell and help others navigate through their experiences. And so this was a big shift in everything for me. This was the full cracking down of my identity. This was the full invitation to me to dive into something far beyond myself. And I was doing the inner work to say, you know, what is it outside of me that feels I need to experience something in another? How can I transmute this desire? We're in the moon of the 30 right now. So this newish moon in the beginning of the year of the snake, we're in this energy, and I'm talking to you about my rapture experience and that burning desire and bringing it up into the higher planes. Looking back now, I understand, you know, I started Googling things like meeting someone that I feel like I've loved for all my life, meeting someone I feel like I've known forever, feeling an orgasm for 2 months straight, you know, 2 weeks straight. I think that was like something I'd Googled before. And that's how I started finding out about Kundalini, because I hadn't heard of Kundalini, I hadn't heard of twin flames, I hadn't heard of this type of stuff yet. Sacred sexuality, tantra, I hadn't really heard of it was all just kind of coming in at the same time. The astrology, the gene keys, the human design, the Kundalini. And, also another thing that I'd read in the Gene Keys from Richard Rudd before I got my hands on the book was about the return of the Kolki avatar and the different aeons of time. And so again, things I'd never heard of before with a background of theology. So if you followed a Rudolf Steiner type of tradition or Madame Blavatsky, or, you've maybe heard of these things and the 7 bodies and the subtle bodies and the rainbow body and the light body and ascension. And all I can describe looking back at it now is I was being initiated on a path of death and rebirth, returning to the immortal nature, ascension, and multidimensionality. But I couldn't quite put terminology to that yet. And I was being invited to understand timelines and time travel and really navigating a life as an eternal, immortal being, dancing through time and space. And so I have an individual circuitry on what's called the cross of contagion, and so is my partner. And so we know we're here to model the individual mutation. That's our main job, is to just model it, and live it and watch it kind of organically unfold. And in the surrender experiment of that quest, it's led me into a world that's almost completely out of monetary systems. I haven't had bank accounts for over 3 years. I don't pay taxes. I don't report to governments. I don't ask governments for social security numbers for my child. I am not seeking out any of the old systems or dependent on them in any way. I live my life totally in service to humanity and the planet Earth. And it's brought me into bringing a transmission like this. It's a reminder. It's an invitation. River, you're hearing my daughter in the background. She wants to be a part of this transmission. She's not feeling so great about it. I've already given her my love and attention, but I hope you guys can feel the love of she's the cross of tension also. So she's got the 38, 39, 51, 57. So she must be feeling some tension in her body right now. She's a projector. So she's feeling whatever she's feeling. And I just kind of hold space for that. It's interesting. You got to learn with your children too, and the different types that they are, and the way that people process emotions, and how we're just all designed a little bit differently to be able to have that compassion and that grace for what people are going through, because we all process the emotion different. Like for me, emotional intelligence and responsibility for your emotions, well, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I have an open solar plexus. The only code I have in the gate of my solar plexus is the 30, the rapture, which is the purification of the lower astral body, the purification of the emotions. So it's kind of brought me into a place where I can't understand why people wallow in emotion. I get to honor and respect everyone for going through emotional states and phases, but I can't understand why we hold on so deeply to the emotional phase. And that's an invitation as we go through this mutation of the solar plexus and the mutation of the emotional body. And notice I'm not telling River, be quiet, stop crying. Why are you crying? She just wants to cry right now. And I'm doing a transmission, and I would like her to not be crying actually in the background, but she is. And so I'm just honoring her going through her process. And she knows I'm here for her. I've been holding her hand most of this time. And eventually, she'll feel complete with her process, and it'll be perfect. But, being more gentle and compassionate with people as they go through their processes, but also seeing that we have an opportunity to start to learn a little bit more about how we handle our emotional state. And The Map of Consciousness by David Hawkins was a really big one for me. in inviting me into a deeper understanding of the frequencies of emotions. And that's why I would actually propose that emotions are actually addictions. And how I know that for sure is because there's a spectrum of emotions, but typically a certain human being will have their favorites. And that's how I know that they're choosing them versus them just being random, unexplained, have no idea why these emotions are coming up right now. Well, probably because you've got some rigid belief systems. Probably because you've got some expectations. Probably because you have a story in your mind that if it's not like this, then my world's falling apart. And if it's not like that, and if they're not like this, and if I can't force or control, think about that for a minute. Force and control, which are the 21 and the 34 shadows, into majesty and valor, a noble life. And what is the 34 plus the 21 equal? 55, freedom. So majesty, this is how my mind thinks now in numerical codes. 34 plus 21 equals 55. We've got majesty, valor equals freedom. And there cannot be force, there cannot be control, there cannot be victimization if we want to embody the majesty planes. So that was one of the biggest invitations that I had. I don't even have the 21 in my chart, but it doesn't matter. We got to let go of that element of control. That's one of the reasons we get so uptight in the emotional state, because we want to control it. We want it to make it look like this, act like that, feel like that. All you can control is how you feel in your body. You can't always control the situation. You can control how you feel. And this is actually a step and an invitation into sovereignty. Sovereignty to me, first and foremost, is that no one else's emotional state controls your emotional state. That you can have a calm, stable, harmonious field in the midst of a storm. This is like Starseed Boot Camp. To be able to hold stillness in the midst of a wild, crazy interaction or reality. Super important invitation. And the Palladian codes, the Palladian mission is about this, actually. It's about heart technology and emotional frequency, understanding of electromagnetic frequencies. And I'll hop there next because I want to talk to you guys about this book called Bringers of the Dawn, Teachings of the Palladians, which you can get the free audiobook on YouTube. This girl handed me this book right around the same time my life was kind of falling apart. It was like Gene Keys, Palladian, Starseed, it all kind of came in at the same time. And I remember reading that book thinking, this is some crazy shit. And I don't know if I want anybody to know I even read that. Most of the people I know would think I was crazy if I ever told them about it. And so I was like reading all this stuff in secret, and it was so juicy I couldn't take it. And I was just turning the pages. For the first time, I'd actually knew for sure why war existed on the earth. And I'd always been thinking in my heart and crying with compassion for, why is there poverty? Why is there war? Why is there sickness? Why are children dying of cancer and all of these things? And then like when I read this book, which was written 26 years before, somewhere around 1992 or something like that. And I was like, she was talking about mind control and technology and electromagnetic frequencies. And I was like, dang, how did she know about this stuff before phones even barely came out? Now imagine what's really going on at this moment in time, because now these things are attached to our hips. Literally. Going without a phone for 2.5 years and kind of just working with the rivers and the water and the dragonflies and the butterflies and the toucans and the hummingbirds, and then like coming back into a city or going to a restaurant and seeing the people glued to their phones, adults and children, you know, watching beautiful sunsets through their phone, sitting at the table eating their food while they're watching videos on their phone, not talking to their partner across the table. I was like, AI, artificial intelligence, AI, alien invasion. You know, that's what I felt like I was seeing. I was like, dang, there is an infiltration, angelic infiltration. That's what I felt like, because I'd been so far away from it for so long that when I came back in, I was like, man, we're losing our ability to even interact. And we think because we can send messages on our phone with winks, winks, likes, hugs, hearts, you know, but then when you sit in a group of people, can you even talk? You know, do you know how to connect? Can you loosen up in a field? Can we bring harmony in the group? Can we have in-depth conversations? It's oftentimes easier to just go sit in the corner and throw the phone up again and just like let the time pass by. So we've lost our organic connection and replaced it with artificial connection. Superficial connection. Superficial, that's a shadow in one of the gene keys, maybe the 20. I think the 20 is superficiality. And that's so interesting because last night I was talking with my partner Eduardo, and we heard something climbing in the forest. And then the next thing you know, there's a skunk right in front of our eyes. And it was like walking up the stairs right before us. And I was like, wow, we are in the 20. We are in the presence. We are moving up an octave right now. And the 20 is an important gate, right? It's part of the gate of the awakening. And so if you think about the 57 that's down hanging out in the spleen, which I have this code, Monsi has this code. We both have in my star pearl, I have it in my stability. And then Monsi has it in her pearl. It's a 57.4. I have another gentleman that's around me that has a 57.4 in his vocation. So now you start to see patterns. You're like, whoa, we're kind of holding a pattern. We can see this fractal coming together. And 57.4, or the 57 in general, it has to do with your time. It's from the shadow of unease to the gift of clarity, to intuition, to clarity. And it has to do with the time of being in the womb of your mother. The 57 does. It has to do with acoustic and sound. It has to do with, actually, they even say in the 57 that the root of disease and illness that would come in the future in your life would likely be rooted in from something that was happening while you were in the womb of your mother. I mean, this is some powerful stuff, the gene keys. I'm talking like I'm talking to a group that knows a lot about gene keys, but maybe you never even heard of it before. Well, welcome to the cosmos. You know, welcome to galactic time and space. Welcome to the solar flash. Welcome to cosmic disclosure. You know, I carry a Bible around with me everywhere I go, and I call the Bible the book of death, and I call the gene keys the book of life, because it really does bring in those codes of responsibility and consciousness and epigenetics and creation. And, you know, I like to propose that before you decided to incarnate into your life, you picked your mom, you picked your dad, you picked the town, you picked your genetic line, you picked your history, you picked your traumas, you picked the challenging things that you would have to go through in your life. And you also picked your gene keys codes. You picked your hero's journey. And so I always like to look at people's charts and see the patterns of what they chose for themselves. They might not remember that they chose it. They might just be being told something like that for the first time. You know, I remember when I read a book by Wayne Dyer called Inspiration, and he was talking about your choice to incarnate through your parents and your family. And I was like, whoa, I chose that? This wasn't just some kind of random event that a mom and a dad had sex and there was a kid being born. It's not just about that. No, it's much more precise. Everything is precise. Everything is mathematics. And that's why I love this right here. This is the Galactic Maya Zolkin. It's based on a Venus cycle. It's 260 days. So it's another piece I like to intertwine and synthesize with gene keys and with genetics. It's connected to Palladian genetics. All right, so I'm hopping around a little bit. We talked about the star pearl. We're talking about bringers of the dawn. So I want to bring you back to that for a minute, because then I started studying a little bit about astrology. And I started to learn that there were particular starseed markers connected to the Palladian codes And they had to do with Scorpio and Taurus between approximately 25 to 29 degrees. So late degree placements in Scorpio and in Taurus. And so when I started picking apart my astrology chart, I realized, wow, I have Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and my sun all between 25 to 29 degrees of Scorpio. So all of it's aligned with the Pleiades. And then my Chiron moon is directly opposite that at 25 degrees Taurus, another Palladian code. Well, what do those equate to in gene keys? Especially gene key 14 and 8. I would call 14 and 8 Palladian codes. I would call the 23 and the 43 Palladian codes. And that's the other Palladian code. I have the 43 is my Jupiter. But then I have Sun, Mercury, Venus in the 14. So I started to look for these starseed markers when I would look at, yes, River, how can I help you? Can I help you? You want to hold my hand? I'll hold your hand. So I started to look at people's charts and see what codes people have connected to this Palladian starseed system. And there isn't anyone that I don't think is, I like to say we're Palladian DNA on a Sirius mission. I would call Sirius the brightest star in the sky right next to Orion's gate. You don't have to take my word for it. 5 years ago, I thought this shit was crazy. But I can say that as I surrendered and started to embrace what was coming to me, and I kept my heart open to it, and I wasn't in constriction. Come closer to me. You want me to come closer to you? Okay. Get a little closer. So this is when some of the Palladian transmission really started to unfold in me. And it's just been many years now kind of putting these pieces together and being able to translate more of the multidimensional reality, a deeper understanding of our ascension path, a deeper understanding of the causal body, the causal plane, which is what's connected to the 43, deeper understanding of the 7 sacred seals, and the opening of that heart portal, which is what the 43 is all about. Once we open the causal plane, once we purify the lower astral body, and we open up that full heart, the higher bodies can descend down into the form. And so I would recommend, if you haven't watched this video by Richard Rudd, it's called Avatar of Synthesis. And he's actually talking about, it's like 6 minutes maybe. He's talking about the return of the Kolki avatar. And he said that the return of the Kolki avatar, the power of this avatar is so grand, it's so big, it's so powerful, that it can't just incarnate into one body, that it has to be a group soul incarnation. And he mentioned the 144,000. Gene Key 7 talks about the 144,000. Revelations in the Bible talks about it. Something's under you. Oh, it's your little clip, I see. And so Kalki avatar, avatar of synthesis. I'm giving you guys homework, okay? Things to kind of poke around with. The Avatar of Synthesis video by Richard Rudd. The Gene Key 59 SoundCloud. And then there's another video that if you haven't watched it, I'd like you to watch, that has Dr. Zach Bush and Richard Rudd talking about transcendent biology and the future human being. And so I'm just one of many that are kind of emerging out of the forest to remind ourselves that we can't give up in these times, that in fact we have to come together, that we really have to learn how to support each other, learn to hold each other through our breakthroughs, learn to invite the higher planes of consciousness down into our body to end not only our suffering, but the suffering of humanity. the suffering of this planet. You know, the North Node, just my friend Debbie, she's Palladian, born direct opposite me, middle of May. So if you've got a birthday middle of May, middle of November, you're aligned with the Pleiades when you're born. But you might also have other codes that are connected to the Palladians. But she just messaged me this morning that the North Node moved from the 25 to the 36. And such a beautiful code of the return of the Christ and the compassion for the suffering of humanity, moving from that turbulent field. You know, our body is a starship. Our body is a starship, and the turbulence in the field tells us we're a little off course. And we can use the intelligence of ourselves instead of falling into the victimization. We can say, I'm feeling turbulence in my starship right now, my body. I'm feeling turbulence here. That means I need to learn how to navigate my path in a more harmonious way. That means I have to be responsible for what's being reflected outside of me. That means I've got to have compassion for myself as I go through this process. But ultimately, you know, it's kind of like when you're in an airplane and you kind of go through those cloudy situations and it gets a little shaky, but eventually you're going to land on the ground. Everything's going to be fine. You just got to stay stable. You don't need to be taken down a path of fear and worry when things get a little turbulent. You stay stable. You know, the end is that you land perfectly. So you just got to stay stable and hold the field. And worst case, you know, put your mask on before the other person kind of story, right? But let's hope that we don't get into any crashes or anything like that. You know, you just got to stabilize yourself, because you know the end is beautiful. You know the return to Eden. Even if you forgot, even if it's hard for you to remember or believe that it's such a thing, even if you grew up in a way that told you that when you die, you'll go to heaven. And that because of the way that that was taught, you thought that that meant when you died, when you were old, that you were going to go to heaven in some other place. Oh, heaven is here. Heaven is here. Heaven is at hand. We are heaven. And we forgot. And so as soon as we die to our fear, as soon as we die to our old ways, as soon as we die to the things that have happened to us in the past that have kept us from returning to the heavenly planes, we can celebrate. You know, that's the 42. And celebration isn't always just rainbows and unicorns, because it actually comes with responsibility, having this knowledge that you might have to go into the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil. You might have to witness things that are keeping humanity from moving into the heavenly realms. You might be called as a systems buster, which is what the Palladians are about. The book Bringers of the Dawn is called the Renegades of Light. Renegades of Light, systems busters. It's talking about a group of souls that would come down and bust that shit open. Well, here we are. I come in peace. Are you on the mission? Do you remember the call? Do you remember why you came here? Are you willing to lay down the story of limitation that's keeping you from being of the highest service to humanity and the planet? That's a purpose worth fighting for. That's a purpose. And you wake up every day and you say, how may I be of service? How may I be of service? How may I be of service to humanity and planet Earth? You think that big. You know your impact is that big. And you know what? In that moment, it might look like you handling a petty little situation that you've ran into a million times differently than you ran into it before. It might look like that. It might look like singing a song while you clean a toilet. You know, it might look like having $0 in your bank account and not knowing how you're going to make it, and being able to find gratitude and compassion and understanding, and to be able to have faith, to be able to have prayer, to be able to say, I keep serving. I've been brought to this situation. For me, I was brought into challenging situations to have compassion for what it must feel like for someone else to go through a situation like that. You know, I went from a life where I always had money for everything that I needed to a life where I never knew where the next money came from. that put me in compassion for what people are going through out there. And then if we just take a reality feed of what's going on right now. Yes. It's so hard. What do you want? Where do you want to go? Do you want to show everybody your sloth? Come. You can show them your sloth. The sloth is Gene Key 33. I love the dream arc, you know, because it's connected, like the toucan is connected to the 14. And I see toucans every single day flying around me. Banana beak toucans with turquoise and yellow. It's so fun. They're always singing in the trees. And hummingbird is number 8. And the sloth is number 33. So it's kind of cool. Costa Rica has all those animals pretty much in a reachable space for me that I can see all the time. And yeah, when you start to, my initiation, yes. You want your necklace? Well, come here and I can help you put it on. Come a little closer. I'm going to put this necklace on River, and I'm going to say with that, thank you, Muncie, for helping me get back on tech and sharing information. Like, I've been hungry to share with my feather brothers and sisters. Yeah, the bird tribe. We are the bird tribe. And that's why I like the birds, right? Because they're the Acidic state. And I don't deny the shadow. But I also know it's much more fun playing in the cities. And they are available to all of us. Huh?
I went to the ocean.
You what?
I want to brush my hair.
You want to brush your hair? I'm going to help you do that. I'm just going to say goodbye on this video, and I'm going to help you brush your hair. Okay, you brush your hair. So
Mama, say goodbye.
I'm saying goodbye. That's my cue. But I leave you with this, that I feel since this, hold on, let me finish this last sentence, okay? I feel the star pearl. I feel the emerging of the harmony sequence. I feel the emerging of Palladian activations on the earth going on right now. In the last week, I've met a few people where I've asked them if they've ever heard of the Palladians. And they're like, one of them was like, I have the bringers of the dawn coming to my house as soon as I get back. She lives in Sedona, but she was visiting here. And I was like, no shit, the Palladians are here. And so the people are receiving and they're remembering. And when you hold that book and you open it up, it unlocks your cosmic library. It unlocks you from a 2-strand limited human to a 12-strand being. And so one of my missions and jobs with the 14, especially that we work in the morphogenetic field, is to be able to transfer information and work with the DNA in an etheric field, in a non-physical field, beyond what science can perceive at this moment in time, because they're still studying 2-strand humans with dissecting and blood and disease. And we're talking about moving beyond the plane of disease and cancers. We are, and we must talk about that. It's 111 my time. And so with that, I will say, stay tuned as the Phoenix returns and Monsi love. And, you know, I feel that it's going to be time to start gathering the people, gathering the star tribes, creating cosmic councils, remembering our cosmic roots, remembering cosmic history, coming together to be of higher service, taking your gifts, your knowledge, and your wisdom and using it for the greater good of humanity. It was written that we would do this. It's a prophecy. There's many, many, many prophecies. Go look them up. Eagle and the Condor prophecy, Revelations prophecy, Dragonfly's dream prophecy. When the eagle and the condor fly together, there will be peace on earth forever. Well, the meeting of the eagle and the condor takes place in Costa Rica. This is the middle point. This is a 0 point. This is a galactic 0 point. So we're being called, Monsi and myself and a few of my other star sisters who've been contemplating the depths of these codes and how we can use them to serve humanity with the 7 sacred seals and such, and move even beyond that into star codons and the star pearl, is really coming into collective harmony and collective missions, working with groups of people, doing retreats here in Costa Rica where we're utilizing the technology of nature and pure water. And we're unplugging you from your environments and your stress and your phones and your busy lives, and just kind of unplugging you from the machine so we can resuscitate you into your more natural, organic, wild ways that we've all but forgot. So we're looking up from the phones, we're taking them out of the picture for a little bit, we're putting those things down, and we're planning to have beautiful gatherings of beautiful clean foods and beautiful music and roses and rose water and rose oil and rose creams and the whole, and body work and working with the yoga and the sun and singing songs and playing drums and sitting around fires, you know, like we did in the old days. Maybe we never have, because we were all kind of born in this tech generation and we forgot. But returning to the roots of the wildness of our hearts, and returning to the stars, and yet in a grounded way, because we're here to bring the star knowledge. We are the star beings, we are the Star Team Alliance, we are the Council of the Most High, and we're here to bring that avatar transmission down to the earth to assist. And so are you, or you wouldn't be watching this video. And so we're opening up that invitation that when and if it's the right time for you, that we can stay in touch online, and possibly even meet in divine timing in the physical. If you're meant to come to a one-on-one retreat or a couples retreat or a groups retreat, we plan to have many of those things coming up in the future, because the sound is clear that we must gather the tribes, we must get the star codes aligned, we must gather the people together in the physical to move through this that we've gone through, to awaken to our higher being, our higher purpose, our higher service. And it's ultimately being of service, not service. I'm talking about being of service from the purity of your heart, with unconditional giving and nothing expected in return. Compassion is one of the greatest gifts. Purity is one of the greatest gifts that will certainly invite you into a path of service. And service might not always look like you think. You know, it might, you could think that it's about leading a revolution of thousands, and it could just be about sitting with a group of 5 and remembering something very important. And that's what happens when cosmic DNA comes into the field and starts to work in a physical presence. So we're rewriting, you know, the 55 talks about a new form of science and spirituality. And so we're on the cusp of that. We're on the front edge of that. And so now it's time to put it into practice. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do we navigate that? Getting in physical presence with other beings who are holding certain levels of frequencies that can transfer codes and data and work on an energetic level and in the etheric field with the nature around them. We're working with stargates. We're working with portals. We're working with wormholes and miracles. We're working with the codon rings. And we are the Synarchy returning. So, okay, I'll drop it at that. Thanks for your patience with me and River. And Monty, is there anything else that we need to drop in?
No, I think it's just, yeah, it's so powerful. You just dropped so many things right now that it's beautiful contemplation. Yeah, thank you so much for all your service and devotion. And yeah, we'll talk again. We'll create more of that. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for setting this up, Monty. I love you so much. And thank you to all who took the time to listen with us today, wherever you are, whenever you are. You know, when you watch the movie Avatar, it's like you see that these are like time traveler people. They go in the pods, but they like leave video transmissions, and they're literally like a time and space oracular like message that's dropped in. So there's never, doesn't matter if this video is 10 years old or 1 year old or 5 days old. It's like, it's a transmission. It's a time traveling transmission. It's teleporting. It's telepathy. And we are still using the telephones to do that so far. Oh yeah, I can put that in your hair. But eventually, you know, we understand that once we really realize how telepathy works and synchronicity works, we think technology is advanced. No, this shit's so basic. We're talking about motherships. You know, we're talking about organic technology, but we forgot. We think cars are advanced and airplanes. No way. I could move from here to France in a moment in a numerical coordinate of time and space. Anyways, we don't have time to talk about teleportation today, but to be continued.
To be continued.
Love you guys.
Bye.
To be continued. Bye.